Good morning. I am Dr. Harpreet Kaur, Professor of Law at National Law University, Delhi. Today I will discuss Module 7 of the course outline on corporate law. This module is about raising of capital by companies by issue of securities. This is a very important area because now most of the public companies they go for raising funds from the public only. So this is a very important area where students should have a better understanding of how the public issue is made by the company, what is meant by IPOs and FPOs, what is meant by offer for sale, what is private placement of securities, how a private company can raise funds, then how companies can issue shares, whether they should be at par, at premium or at discount, whether the companies they can go ahead with acceptance of deposits. All these aspects will be discussed in this module. I would like to begin the module with a statement which was given by Palmer. He says that capital in many cases is the lifeblood of a concern, and it is always a great misfortune where the development of a business is arrested or restricted by want of capital. So this statement gives the importance of funds for a company for running its business. And you should know that company is the only form of organization which has been given this privilege that it can raise capital from the public, and especially this is in the case of a public company. None of the other organizations they can raise public funds. So first of all we need to understand what are the methods available to a company in which it can raise funds. So it can raise a share capital in the form of shares from the public in the form of public issue of shares. It can also borrow from the public in the form of borrowings or loans from the public. Now how it has to be decided, or why a company decides whether it should go for a share capital or whether it should go for a issue of debt securities or should take loans or should issue debentures to the prospective investors, this depends upon the need of the company. Second, this depends upon the market of the country where the company is situated, what is the sentiment of the market, what are the interest rates which are prevalent in the market, what is the possibility of availability of loan in the market, what is the sentiment of the public whether they should go for investment in the company, what is the goodwill or the reputation of the company. So whether taking a loan would be more expensive for the company rather than taking it in the form of share capital. So all these financial analysis has to be done by the company in order to decide on whether it should go for raising the share capital or whether it should borrow in the form of loans or by issue of debentures or other types of debt securities. Now another thing which is important for the investors is that when a company is coming up with the public issue, they should also know what this company is all about, what is the objective of the company, why the company wants to raise this money, what had been the past of the experience of the shareholders of the company, whether company has been paying profits to existing shareholders of the company, where this money will be used, how this money will be repaid, whether they will be giving interest on the debentures or whether the dividend will be paid, when this amount will be raised, who are the directors of the company. All this information is necessary for the investors of the company, because in view of, for example, in view of the latest Sahara scam which is going on, where a disguised private placement was made, it was said to be a private placement whereas it resulted into a public issue of securities. So this is how now investors they do not know how their money will be returned, and the Supreme Court is finding it difficult to make Sahara company to return the money to the investors, and the poor investors now they are at the mercy of the company's promoters because they know that their money is in their hands and it is not safe because they are not sure whether their money will be returned or not. So in this situation it is also necessary for the company to give all such information to the prospective investors or the shareholders, that the purpose for which the company wants to raise money and how it will be raised, how it will be returned, and whether the loan is a secured loan or it is unsecured loan. All such information has to be given to the prospective investors. Now the raising of capital is not only governed by the Companies Act 2013, but it is also governed by Securities Contracts Regulation Act of 1956, because securities, the term securities is defined by SCRA Act only, and also when the companies go for listing of their securities, SEBI regulations have also to be followed, especially SEBI regulation about issue of capital and disclosure requirements regulation of 2009, and which is about public issue of shares, and SEBI issue and listing of debt securities regulations of 2008, which is about when the company goes ahead with the issue of debt securities. So, these regulations have to be followed by the company at the time of public issue and raising loan. Now, let us have a look at the definition of the securities, what securities include. So, this is defined by section 2H of the SCRA 1956. So, I will read the definition for you. The first point says that securities include. So, this is an inclusive definition. This does not give the meaning of the word securities, but it gives the what is included under the term securities. So, securities include shares, scrips, stocks, bonds, debentures, debenture stock, or other marketable securities of a like nature in or of any incorporated company or other body corporate. So, all type of securities which may be in the form of shares, scrips, debentures, debenture stocks or bonds, but they are of marketable nature. What do we mean by marketable nature? That means they are capable of being sold and being purchased in the market. So, all such instruments, they will be included in the term securities. Then this includes derivatives or units or other instruments issued by any collective investment scheme to the investors in such schemes. Earlier it was doubtful whether the collective investment schemes, they fall within the purview of securities, whether they fall in the within the purview of the SEBI regulations or not, but now this clarity has been made that even the CIS, all the CIS, they will be within purview of SEBI regulations. So, collective investment regulations of SEBI will be applicable to them. And although the collective investment schemes were there in the act itself, but there was a confusion whether they are under RBI's regulation or Ministry of Corporate Affairs was looking into the into collective investment schemes. So, this is the second sub point. Then security receipts, which are defined by section G of section 2 of the Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Securities Security Interest Act of 2002, which is known as SARFAESI. So, any security receipt which is defined by SARFAESI also falls under the definition of securities. Any units or any other such instrument which is issued by the mutual fund schemes to investors, they are also known as securities. So, if you have any mutual fund, you are investing into any mutual funds, the units which are issued to you by the mutual fund when you are giving systematic investment plans through the systematic investment plan, you are investing into mutual fund, even those units they fall under the definition of securities. Then any certificate or instrument which is issued to the investors by a special purpose distinct entity which possesses any debt or receivables including the mortgage debt, those security receipt holders or the instrument holders, they have the beneficial ownership or the beneficial title to this mortgage debt or the debt receivables, they are also units. So, special purpose distinct entities, they issue securitized debt instruments. So, these securitized debt instruments, the person who is having this securitized debt instrument is having beneficial interest on the debt against which these securitized debt instruments have been issued by the special purpose distinct entity. So, these are also known as securities. Then the next category is of government securities, the securities which are issued by Government of India. Then other instruments which are referred as by the central government to be securities, they are also fall under the definition of securities. After that, any rights or interest in the securities is also is the last category of the definition of securities. So, this is what is meant by securities which can be issued by the either by the companies or by the government. Let us now come to what is public offer. So, public offer, as the term indicates, that this is an offer which is made by the company to the public. So, this is an offer for the public issue where the company wants to raise money from the public. So, it can be in the form of IPO, that is initial public offering, or FPO, that is further public offering, or OFS. OFS is offer for sale. Now what is meant by initial public offer? As again the name indicates that the public offer which is initially made, which is the first public offer by any company. So it can be a newly listed company which is going for public offer. It can be any listed company which has so far, although it has listed its securities but has not gone for any public issue. So it can be any unlisted company which wants to get its securities listed and reach the public through the public offer, or it can be a listed company which is for the first time going to the public for through its initial public offer. Then further public offering or further issue of capital is by the listed companies which have earlier gone through the public issues, and now they want to increase their share capital. So that is why they are going ahead with the further public offer. Offer for sale is where existing shareholders of the company, they want to sell their shares to the, they want to propose to sell their shares to the public. That will be known as offer for sale. For example, if a promoter is having 50% shares in the company and he wants to offer them to the public, then through the means of the company he can offer their offer his shares to the public for sale, then it will be known as offer for sale. Similarly, in the case of disinvestment by public sector undertakings, the government of India is holding shares in the name of the President of India which are offered to the public for through the disinvestment scheme through the means of a public issue, then it becomes offer for sale. Now section 23 of the Companies Act 2013 says that a company can issue, a public company can issue securities to the public through the means of prospectus. They can also issue securities through the means of private placement, through the rights issue or bonus issue. So what is meant by prospectus? We will discuss it a little later. So prospectus is offered document which gives an offer to the shareholders for the for buying securities or subscribing to the securities or shares of the company. Private placement, when it is given, when the offer is given to a selected group of persons, and rights issue is when the offer is given to the existing shareholders. Bonus issue is when the offer is, when the shares are issued to the existing shareholders where they do not have to pay the value of the shares. And when a company is going for the public offer, then it has to list its securities. The listing of securities and the listing agreement is provided by SCRA. Only after the listing of securities any public offer can be made by the public company to the public. Let us now discuss what is private placement. Private placement is defined by section 23 of the Companies Act 2013, where it first of all it says that how a private company can issue securities. So a private company can issue securities obviously through rights issue and bonus issue, because rights issue is given to the existing shareholders and bonus issue is also given to the existing shareholders free of cost. So a private company can raise funds through these two methods, and also it can go ahead with the private placement. Now what is private placement? Private placement is defined by section 42. It says that any offer of any offer of securities to a selected group of persons not exceeding 50 in number, then it is known as private placement. So the company decides, company identifies 50 people, not more than 50 people. These are the selected group of persons to whom the securities have to be offered or shares have to be offered, and then they will buy those shares. So the every negotiation is done beforehand. The offer document is given to them, and the offer document is meant for the selected group of persons only. They do not have the right to further transfer it to any other person. The selected group of persons then they subscribe to the securities of the company. So this is what is meant by the private placement. Section 42 says that private placement does not include, cannot be given to qualified institutional buyers, and it can also not given to the employees of the company, because employees of the company, they receive securities under the employees stock option. So this cannot be given to the employees of the company. Let us come to the rights issue. The rights issue, as I told you, that it is made to the existing shareholders of the company. So when the company is in need of further issue of capital, so the first offer is given to the existing shareholders of the company. So they can 15 to 30 days time is given to them, so that if they want to accept those shares, they can accept those shares. otherwise they can reject it or they can use their right to renounce these shares in favor of any other person. So this is what is meant by the rights issue. Bonus issue is when the capitalization of profits is done by the company. So if the company has free reserves or it has profits in the securities premium account, or if it has capital redemption reserve, amount from this can be transferred in the form of shares, and these shares can be issued to the existing shareholders of the company free of cost. So that results in the capitalization of profit. That means the profit is converted into capitals, and accordingly the share capital is raised and the need of the company for further issue of capital is taken care of by the company, and company does not have to borrow money from the outside, or it does not have to go ahead with the public issue once again and increase the number of shareholders. Now let us come to the definition of prospectus. The definition is given by section 270 of 2 subsection 70 of the Companies Act 2013. It says that prospectus means any document described or issued as a prospectus, and it includes a red herring prospectus, a shelf prospectus, or any notice, a circular, advertisement or other document which invites offers from the public or for the subscription of or purchase of any securities of a body corporate. So this is the definition. So I will give you the explanation what is meant by prospectus. So any notice, document or circular which is issued, or advertisement which is issued by a company at the time of coming up with public issue, where it is inviting public to subscribe for its shares or purchase its securities, then it is known as prospectus. And prospectus includes red herring prospectus and shelf prospectus also. So the prospectus is the main document, is the document which helps a public to decide on whether they should invest in this company or not. Now what should be the content of the prospectus? The full structure of what should be the content of the prospectus is given by the Companies Act. The main points will be over here, that first of all prospectus has to be dated, then company has to justify what is the need of the company, why this money is being raised by the company, which is the project where this money will be used, what will be the way in which the money is being invited by the company, whether it is in the form of shares or whether it is in the form of debt securities. If it is in the form of shares, whether they are equity shares or whether they are preference shares, what are the terms and conditions of the offer of these shares, then who are the directors of the company, who are the promoters of the company, then whether the directors they have consented to be directors of the company, whether the promoters they have contributed towards the promoters contribution, which is 20% of the post issue capital or the pre issue capital of the company. So from where they are contributing, the promoters contribution, what are the types of securities which are given, which they have to be complied with as per the SEBI regulations of issue of capital and disclosure requirements 2009. Then what type of shares are issued, that we have already discussed. Then who are the experts of this prospectus, if any expert has given his opinion, whether he has consented in writing to give his opinion, all this information has to be given. Then when the date of the list of opening will start, when the shares will be allotted, what will be the closing of the issue, all this information has to be given. Then again one thing which has been added this time by 2013 Act is that what is the management perception of risk factors of this relating to this particular project, that has to be mentioned in the prospectus. What is the gestation period, that has to be mentioned, and what is the feasibility of this project, that it will be able to be completed within the deadline which has been fixed up by the company, and whether there has been any litigation against the promoters of the company in the last preceding 5 years. So in the prospectus, along with this information, it has also to be mentioned what is the total amount which is proposed to be raised, what is the minimum subscription, if the shares are issued on the premium, what is the premium payable, and if they are issued on otherwise then in cash, to whom they are issued, and what is the kind in which the payment will be received by the company. All this information has to be given. Then also the information, financial information about the company, the auditor's reports, the director's reports, report on the profit and loss of the company, if the company has been facing any losses in the last 5 years, all this information has to be given by the company, what are the assets, what are the liabilities of the company, how many times earlier company has issued come up with public issue, how many depositors company has, and what is the business in which this fund will be used by the company. All this information is necessary for the knowledge of the investors, because they have to make an informed decision, they have to take an informed decision. They should not regret their decision that they are not getting any return on their investment. Then at the end of this prospectus, a declaration has to be given that the proper resolution was passed and which authorized the issue of this prospectus, and then on the basis of that everything was complied with by the company's directors and the persons who have authorized issue of this prospectus. Then this prospectus comes to an end, then it has to be filed with ROC, it has to be filed with SEBI also, so that they are also if they want to suggest any amendment or any modification in the prospectus, they can also suggest to it. So this is what is the content of the prospectus. Now there are certain exceptions where the company is not required to issue any prospectus. So this is the first, where the shares are given to the existing shareholders, so or existing debenture holders. So then full prospectus is not required, only an offer document is to be made by the company giving the necessity of raising this fund, how many shares are issued, because when you are issuing shares or debentures to existing debenture holders or shareholders, then they have to be offered in proportion to their shareholding or their loan in the company, in the company. So that is how the company decides the proportion. So no prospectus is to be issued, but an offer document has to be sent to them. And then in the case of where shares or debentures were earlier issued and they are already listed and they are uniform, the new issues also uniform in all respects with the existing shares or debentures, then the company is also not required to issue any prospectus. Now let us come to the deemed prospectus. Now any document where a company is giving offer for sale, that is also deemed to be a prospectus, because in case of offer for sale, one existing shareholder through the company is selling its shares to the company. So this is offer for sale by existing shareholder of the company, but the document which is made through which the public is invited to subscribe for these shares, that document is also deemed to be a prospectus. Now let us understand what is a shelf prospectus. Now shelf prospectus is meant for those companies or public financial institutions or scheduled commercial banks which are frequently raising money from the public. So if we look into the financial institutions or the scheduled banks, all of them, they are raising money because they have to give these to the other people who require money from the banks or the loans from the banks. So they have to raise frequently public money from the public. In such a situation, every time they have to make a prospectus. So a facility is given to them that they can make a shelf prospectus for with the tenancy of 1 year. So in that, during that year, company can raise company can raise 3 or 4 times the public issue through the same prospectus. So shelf prospectus is like a prospectus or the information which is lying on the shelf in the office of the registrar of companies. So once the prospectus has been filed, so during 1 year the company can go ahead with 2 or 3 or 4 depending upon the need of the company for the public issues on the similar type of shares or the debentures for which the shelf prospectus has been made. They have to be uniform. They have to be uniform in all matters, which are given in the shelf prospectus. So the company is not required to every time to write prospectus and submit it to ROC. Now over here, but the thing which has to be maintained by the company, that let us say that company has come up with one public issue. Now after 3 months the company goes ahead with second public issue on the same shelf prospectus. Within this 3 months, whatever changes in the financial position of the company has incurred, or there is any information which the public should know, that information should be filed in the form of information memorandum to ROC, so that the necessary changes can be made and this information can be circulated to the public also. So this is the requirement in case of a company goes for shelf prospectus. So let us now discuss the red herring prospectus. Red herring prospectus does not have the quantum of the securities which are being offered by the company, and also does not have the final price of the securities. A price band is given in which through the book building process the bids are invited from the public, from the prospective buyers or subscribers to the shares or buyers of the securities, that they want to offer within the price band, and on the basis of the offer then later on the price of the securities is finalized, and then the final price is quoted in the full prospectus. Otherwise in all other respects the red herring prospectus and the full prospectus remains the same. If there is any change in the red herring prospectus, that change has to be notified in the full prospectus. What is abridged prospectus? Abridged prospectus is a short prospectus which contains only the salient features of the prospectus. Now prospectus is a voluminous document, and it is not possible for a company to give prospectus to the huge prospectus to everyone, because a lot of expenditures is involved in printing such kind of a prospectus. So the Companies Act gives this privilege to the companies that they can make an abridged prospectus which contains salient features of the full prospectus, and they can be issued along with the application form to the prospective investors. So if any investor wants to read the full prospectus, he can write to the company and get the full copy of the full prospectus. So this is what is meant by the abridged prospectus. So we have discussed what is prospectus, shelf prospectus, red herring prospectus and abridged prospectus. Now this prospectus, as I told you, all this information which is given by the company in the prospectus has to be true information, because public is at the mercy of the promoters of the company. What they write in the prospectus, on the basis of that they invest their hard earned money. So the golden rule of public deposits, it says that the public is at the mercy of the company's promoters. So whatever is stated in the prospectus should be stated as scrupulous and as accurate possible. So that is why there are liabilities which are put up on the promoters of the company or the directors of the company if the prospectus contains any untrue statement or any misrepresentation or any false statement. So let us now discuss the liability for misstatements in the prospectus. So first liability is in the form of tortious liability, which is given under the heading of damages for deceit, and the most important case and the leading case over here is Derry versus Peak. Now in this case what happened, there was a company which used to run tramways through the mechanical power. So the company wanted to have sanction for running the tramways by steam power, and the company had applied for the sanctions. So two sanctions were required. One was from the parliament and another was from Board of Trade. So the parliament had given the sanction that the company can go ahead with steam running tramways with the steam power. On the basis of this, they issued a prospectus where they had written, the directors had written in the prospectus that company has now the necessary sanction for running tramways with the steam power. So the company will be a profit earning company and the huge profits will be gained by the company. So on the basis of this, the shareholders, they applied for the shares. Later on, the Board of Trade refused to give this grant this sanction to the company. So few shareholders, they sued the directors of the company that the directors, they had given a false statement in the company, due to which the shareholders, they have faced loss because the company has not got the approval for running tramways by the steam power. So over here the directors were not held liable on the ground that they had this honest belief that the approval by the Board of Trade will be given, because once the approval is given by the parliament, the Board of Trade will definitely give the approval. So there was an honest belief that this approval will be given. So the directors were not held liable against for compensating the shareholders. Now this created a lot of problem, because on the basis of honest belief, the directors, they were able to save themselves against the disputes which were raised by the shareholders for the false statements which they had made. So that is why to take care of this issue, a requirement of compensation was fixed up, which is in the form of civil liability under section 35, that even if the directors have the honest belief but the statement is false, they will be held liable to compensate the shareholders. So, every director of the company, every person who authorized himself to be named as the director of the company, every promoter of the company who is named as promoter in the prospectus, and every expert who has consented to give expert opinion on the prospectus, all four of them, they will be held liable to compensate the shareholder and shareholder who has suffered loss due to the statement which was false, and their liability will be joint and several liability. So, this is how the problem which was created through the decision of Derry versus Peek was overcome by putting this section of compensation under section 35 of the Companies Act. Next is a rescission for misrepresentation. This remedy lies in the hands of the shareholder. So, if he wants to take back his shares, he can apply to the court for cancellation of his contract for of shares. So, he will return the share certificate to the company and company will refund his money back to him. But obviously, there are certain precautions which have to be taken by the shareholder over here. There should not be undue delay in that. Shareholder should not affirm that he has received and now he is going he is keeping with his shares, and also the winding up process should not begin in between. So, if the shareholder affirms, if there is undue long delay for offering for rescission for misrepresentation, or the winding up of the company has started, then this remedy will not be available in the hands of the shareholder. The next remedy is in the form of criminal liability, which is given by section 34. So, over here, if any false statement or any untrue statement is given by the directors of the company, then they can be held liable under section 447 of the Companies Act 2013, which deals with punishment for fraudulent purposes. So, this is a common section which applies at number of places. So, even if a person gives a false statement, even if the false statement relates to the prospectus, the directors and promoters, they will be liable for this and criminally liable for this under section 447. So, the false statement or untrue statement can be false in context, it can be false in form, it can be untrue, or it can be also misleading. So, if it is misleading and due to these statements or the misrepresentation, if the investor is misled for investing in the company, then the directors, they can be held liable under this particular section. Now, what will be the defense to the directors? They can say that the statement was immaterial or the fact was immaterial. Then they can say that they honestly believed, and till the time of the issue of the prospectus, they believed that this statement is true. They can also say that the person did not authorize the prospectus containing such untrue statement or misrepresentation, and when he came to know that this has been published, he gave a public notice of this. Or he can also give as a defense that he was not the director of the company, and when he came to know that his name has been put up as a director in the prospectus, then he gave a public notice of this. So, these are few defenses which are available to the persons when they are criminally held liable under this particular section. Then another last remedy is under section 36, which is about punishment for falsely inducing persons to invest money. If any person is inducing any person on the basis of the false information to invest money, then this can also be punished under section 447 of the Companies Act. So, in this particular module, we have discussed about the public offers, how a company goes ahead with public issue of shares, how a private company raises fund, how a public company raises fund. Over here, please also understand that it is not necessary for a public company to always go for public issue. It can also go for private placement of securities. So, it can select 50% and it can raise fund from the through the private placement also. And we also discussed about rights issue, bonus issue, what is prospectus, what are the different types of prospectuses, and also what are the liabilities for misrepresentation in the prospectus. Thank you very much.